Here we go. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming to Huddle today. I'm going to make this hour worth your time. And as always, definitely encourage your participation, your questions, your input. Don't hesitate to raise your hands. Just unmute yourself. Throw it in the chat if you're shy about talking on a mic, whatever. Hey, so we're gonna discuss two things today. And those two things are I want to talk about the Rep C, but we are going to talk about it from the perspective of how are we educating our clients about the Rep C and sort of go paragraph by paragraph. We're not going to read through them. We'll talk about the loose idea and then we will discuss, the dialogue surrounding that. And I know that there's a lot of ways to have this dialogue, so I'd love to hear your perspective on it. And then we're also going to discuss prospecting and the things we say, how we say them, what do we do, who do we make a phone call to, and what does that look like? And we'll try to get into some real detail there to provide some real value for that subject, because that's a difficult subject and not an easy one to tackle. I think it's probably always prospecting. There's a few agents out there who are just really good at it and they don't care and they enjoy it. And the rest of us, I feel like it's always a challenge and you always kind of got to push yourself to get to that spot where you're making the phone calls. So that's what we're going to discuss today. And so without further ado, I don't quite know if I should be sharing my screen. I guess I'll share my screen and we'll try to talk through this for the people who are not quite at a computer and they're driving their car. So by raise of hands or contribution to the chat, how many people are doing a full-on going through the 6 page of the Rep C education to their listing, maybe in a listing presentation or maybe a little later on, education to their clients about the Rep C beforehand, before they receive an offer or before they write an offer? Who's doing that? Kimmy, you had a very confident expression. No confidence there. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I think this is a tough one because a real education of the Rep C is I mean, you can't do it in 10 minutes. You got to find a way to get with very busy people, and you're busy yourself, to give them some education on this purchase contract, and arguably this is the most important part of the transaction. What's written in here and how it impacts them. I think for the most part, most of our clients really aren't reading this document. They're relying on us to provide the perspective and everything. So let's jump in here. I'm going to share my screen, and if anybody has any perspective at any time, please throw it in here. Love to hear it. All right, you should see the purchase contract right there. Let's dive in. So when we talk about educating our clients, I don't know that we need to focus on necessarily any of this stuff up here, offer, reference, date, that type of thing. Some of the things I think we need to discuss briefly are included, excluded items. I think that's always important. As a buyer's agent, I think, that's the one that can really get out of hand quick. If you're walking through a home and you're writing an offer and you want to get an offer, I don't know why, but it's always like, let's get the offer out tonight. And you have 6 things in front of you and you don't have an appropriate amount of time to get that offer properly. The real detail that you should devote to it. It's always in a rush for some reason. Included and excluded items, that should always be a discussion beforehand with your buyers, in my opinion, because it just sort of sets them up to think about the things in a house when they walk through a little differently, because we can overlook those things. If there's a garage refrigerator, if there's an extra set of this or an extra set of that floating around, we need to have that discussion. So make sure you're talking about that. Purchase price. I think this seems fairly easy, but just recently I saw kind of a hack job of this section. By the way, how many people are really filling this out. So balancing cash, so earnest money is obvious, right? Um, New loan amounts and balance of cash, those two. So 2C and 2E. How many people are really filling those out with their estimate? Everybody? Where's my chat go? Sorry, y'all. I had a chat up, and if you're chatting me right now, I don't know where my window went. Maybe I don't have it up. There you go. There we go. Yeah, this is my problem. All right. Everybody's saying yes, I do each line, even if it's just a zero. Yeah, I think we need to. There does seem to be some hesitation for some reason. There is some idea out there floating around in our industry that, these numbers don't mean anything, or they mean too much, and so if we put something down, we're bound to it. But read this in paragraph in that first sort of couple sentences in 2.1. Any amounts shown in section 2.1C and 2.1E may be adjusted as deemed necessary by buyer and lender. There you have it, right? It's written right there that we can make those easy adjustments. But this is part of your offer and how the other people perceive your offer, right? If there's some laziness surrounding these numbers, maybe that should be a bit of a concern. Maybe those are the follow-up questions that we maybe on a listing side should be asking. Is it 100% financing? Well, if it is, better be maybe a VA loan, right? If it's a very little down, maybe we should do some math, right? The perception of these numbers are important, and I think no matter what side of the transaction we're on, we need to pay really close attention and do our best to be as accurate as possible. Okay, so that's the idea surrounding that. Anybody have any comments on the purchase price or the education to our clients of this section? No, moving on. Section 2.2. This one, for you old timers, is maybe even feeling still relatively new. This is a really good time to tell your client that you don't have a choice about disclosing whether or not you have a property to sell. Right? We have to disclose this. We don't have any choices. And by the way, when we check this, we need to follow it up with the subject to sale of buyer's property addendum. And, we're not going to go into that right now, but that's sort of self-explanatory. Settlement. This can be, I think we should definitely have a brief conversation about settlement. Now, for those who are ready, let somebody in the chat or unmute themselves. Give me your, not word for word, but what is your dividing line between settlement and closing? What is the dividing line between settlement and closing? Because it's really important we use the right language here.
Can I say something?
Please do.
Yeah, I'd like to explain what that really is, that settlement and closing really is not finalized until we have had the funding of the funds and recording with the county.
Okay, so what are you saying about which one goes to which?
We have the settlement deadline, and well, they kind of go together. I might be explaining it wrong, but what I try to get to with my clients is it is not completely settled, even though our settlement deadline may be XYZ date. It's not finalized until everything has been funded, paid out, and then recording takes place with the county, and then it is vested in the name of the new buyer.
All right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that line of thinking there. I think it is important to tell your clients these are two separate things, because I think people can get a little caught up that when they sit down and sign documents that this process is over. And, a good portion of the time it kind of is for them, right? They don't really do anything else. But there's other stuff to do. There's other things that actually take place. So spend a little time talking about the difference between settlement and closing. And by the way, this has occurred. This last line in 3.2, The actions described in 3.2 B and C shall be completed no later than 4 calendar days after settlement. So if you ever, by the way, this is a really good example of why no matter how much the other party is getting on our nerves or unreasonable they may seem, I have seen this more than once. The pettiness and the vindictiveness comes to the surface and someone has a little bit of knowledge and they delay closing by up to 4 days and they have no consequences because it's in the contract. So remember that. Remember that when you want to throw a zinger at the other party.
Hey, Mike, can I
Yeah,
add something too? I
please.
think it's important that we advise our buyers that settlement is also that they have to have their funds into the title company. That is part of the definition of the settlement, fulfilling the settlement
Yeah.
items that need to be done.
Thank you. That is the most important part of the settlement discussion. Like their, when we're educating somebody, that's their most important part of settlement. You're absolutely right, Sharon. Thank you. Got to get your money in. Got to get your money in. And, we all know this. Don't get it day of. Like, that's just the worst. It's the worst. Give them some advice day before, maybe 2 days before. Kristen Bitzer says, sign paperwork and funds from buyer due on settlement. Close means funded by lender and recorded by the county. Love that. That's really simple. Really simple definition. Yeah, just give them some context about their role and how that plays. And often that's just like get your money where it needs to be beforehand. Possession. This one can kind of be a tricky one. Yeah, I think everybody's like, well, the second I close, I want to move into this house. I want my property. That can happen, doesn't always happen. So this is a really good opportunity to talk about the transition and the things that are important. You can obviously do upon recording, if all that works, X hours after recording or calendar days after recording. By the way, if you do get in situations where they want to do multiple calendar days, there is some point at which you should talk about short-term lease agreements that should accompany this. Now, what is everybody's opinion on the short-term lease agreement that should accompany possession? Instead of, in lieu of, just simply putting number of calendar days out there. Sharon, you're an expert. I would say you.
Well, I don't know that I'm an expert, Mike, but I think that when you get to a few days out, well, probably at least more than 4 or 5 days, that short-term lease agreement will tie down things like who's going to take care of the utilities, what's going to happen with those type of things. There may be some security deposit that you may want to get. So there's a lot of other details in that document that ties things down and let everyone know who's responsible for what.
Yeah. Thank you, Sharon. And by the way, if you don't know that you're an expert, rest assured I know that you're an expert. I don't know that that makes you feel any better, but I do know that.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I think in my mind, and I've just made this up, and I don't know that there's significant rhyme or reason. I think at the week mark, at the 7-day mark, that's when you start having a discussion with the other party, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know that there's no real rules here, but just in your brain, if they're doing 7 days or more, start the conversation about a short-term lease agreement. Also, let's talk about the worst case scenario for possession. I have encountered this a few times when we talk about vindictiveness or pettiness or any of those things. There has been situations where the seller was not out in time, and we represented the buyer, and we showed up at this home, and the seller was still moving out. And unbeknownst to us, the buyer confronted them, not in a pleasant way. And then the seller proceeded to stay in the home for another 3 days and not come out or open the door or answer doors. And the cops aren't going to do anything. It's not their business. And the only way to get them out is through the courts. So just remember, always kill them with kindness. And if you just can't help it and you got to say something, you got to throw your jab, you got to wait like 2 weeks after closing. That's like if you got to throw your I mean, I would also use a burner account if I had to. Okay, just don't do it. It's just not worth it. Linda says, "Is it? It is protection and clarification for all." Yes, I think if either party is thinking about 7 days or more, it's much more comforting to have that short-term lease agreement in place and have that conversation than it is to just close and sit around for 10 days. I mean, just think about all the parties involved, especially the buyer and you as the buyer's agent potentially waiting 10 days with no agreements in place other than this purchase contract. Starting to feel, I think, a little uncomfortable, even as a listing agent, right? Like, what are they going to do? Are they going to get out in time? Like all sorts of things. All that can be overcome by planning and great communication, certainly, but things to think about. Prorations, special assessments, fees, costs, payment obligations. I think this is a really good spot to talk about. I mean, some of these would be more important than others. If you're in an HOA, this section would be really important, right? That who's paying these assessments or capital improvements. That's a really good opportunity to talk about that. That's when you'll talk about it. This section, I think a lot of people have questions on. 4.3, fees, costs, payment obligations. If it were me, I think on this section, I'm just going to say this is where it lays out the demising line for properly allocating the ongoing fees or fees or real estate taxes or whatever, and we split them equally down the line, and each party kind of takes care of their own. Somebody would like to correct me, please do. And I spoke too soon on special assessments because obviously there is a HOA, special HOA section there. But this is interesting. Why is there two sections for HOA? I mean, it seems kind of redundant there. Maybe we should tell somebody to clean that up. Anyway, also utility services. That's an easy one. I think by now everybody should be super comfortable with the real estate fees section of this. I mean, as a real estate agent, you should be the most comfortable with this. How many people are not feeling as a buyer's agent? I would guess that you feel more comfortable having this discussion and putting it in the contract than you did before. Is that accurate or not accurate? I got a lot of nods. Yeah, I think it feels a little better. I also think buyer's compensation is going up, much to the dismay of certain brokerages and lawsuits. I don't think they anticipated that, but that is just sort of there's a default number being placed in there, which shall not be named, but it is being placed in there. So yeah, that seems like a pretty comfortable conversation, but especially with our buyers, we're having that conversation well beforehand, and then now they can just see where this actually goes into the contract. So there you have it. Sale proceeds withholding. Yeah, I don't know that that's a real conversation to be had. Tara says, not a problem. One item I have noticed as the listing agent is the buyer's agent is making the font super tiny. Almost can't read it. That's kind of clever if they're doing it on purpose. Is anybody else noticing this phenomenon? So you're receiving that. I mean, I feel like this, it's a common, is it blue? Is it blue coming from the Utah real estate forms? That's very interesting.
Sorry. No, the one thing that I've just noticed, and I'm just like, are you doing that on behalf of, you don't want the buyer to know? Or are you hoping I'm just gonna pass it by when I do the net sheet?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'd like to be really positive and have a really healthy spin on this, but I don't think I can here. I think it's likely it's a program that's doing it, but unfortunately, I just wouldn't put it past people to slide that past. And I only say that because I have been involved in my early years dealing with purchase contracts that are drafted, in the commercial world. They have different purchase contracts, and many of the brokerages have their own. But there is, one or two sort of standard ones. And it got to be my practice to review every line because for a short period of time, they were trying to be tricky and throw their commission in random paragraphs and sort of try to blend it in and, camouflage it a bit. So yeah, that's a real thing. Kristen says dot loop seems to automatically make it font size 8 on our end. I always have to make it larger. So dot loop is conspiring to fool all the listing agents. How dare they? How dare they? That is funny. But is it only in that one? It's got to be font, like a size 8 font in the rest, right?
Well, yeah. So it's, I mean, it's a visually very different size font than the rest of the document. So it's like a 2.5 or a 5 font, where everything else is like a 10. I mean, so it's noticeably different.
Yeah, you have to go out of your way for that. All right, everybody. There's one more thing to be paranoid about. Small fonts on the rep C in important spots. So add that to the list and up your medication. All right, confirmation of agency disclosure. This is a huge one. But of course, by this time, we've already had a conversation about agency. And then you can, in my opinion, this is just where agency is reaffirmed on the purchase contract. So the seller and the buyer themselves know who is standing where. And that seems like a pretty standard conversation. I think we're all probably good about talking about those things. Title and title insurance. What does everybody say about title insurance? What is your just out of the box delivery? Because, does a first time home buyer really know what title insurance was? If it's your second deal, you might have some perspective on it, and we know kind of what insurance means. What is our talk track around title insurance? I think my opinion on this is that, because there's been so many owners, very likely owners of this, and even if we're talking about new construction, multiple people very likely have owned the ground under which your home is built. And so there is a long history of this property that has been handled through the county. And there has been a lot of people who have handled those documents. And so if you believe that over, whatever town you're in that was founded in 1867 and they started to do surveys and handle that, if you believe that no one has made a mistake up until that time, well, then we don't need title insurance, right? But because people handle these and there are conflicting accounts of reality, there is going to be potential conflict around a title. And so our title insurance is essentially saying, hey, we're going to go and investigate this. And if we don't find any problems, we will feel comfortable issuing an insurance policy to protect you against any future claims. How do you like that, Sharon? How would you give that explanation?
I think that sounds really good, Mike. That's
Thank
really
you.
good.
Thank
I
you.
just, the terms that I use are free, clear, and marketable title. You're assured that you have free, clear, and marketable title. Those are the words I usually throw out.
Yeah, your explanation's better than mine.
No, it's not.
Yeah, those are, they should have some perspective on that. I think at the end of the day, I think we need to make it clear that a title company is essentially selling an insurance policy. They hold the same license as someone selling life insurance, right? Kind of the same deal. They provide a service that is much greater than that, right? They're handling funds and they're making sure everything's accurate and all those things. But the bottom line is they're selling a title insurance policy. Okay. So these two things, sometimes these are important and sometimes they're not. Long-term lease agreements and short-term rental bookings. So, obviously depending on the property, we may have to have a discussion about this. does the buyer of a rental property get to come in and change the rental agreement once they own it? No, never, right? I think we all kind of understand that very clearly, but many people do not. And there are some investors out there who will lay claim that they can do those things. But the bottom line is, if we have any type of agreements on these properties, these agreements, regardless of whose name is listed as seller, will transfer to the new owner. And so you need to have a discussion about that if that is the case, and that the new owner is subject to the terms of that lease agreement. All these people who have even the short term. So think about this: you book an Airbnb and you're going to go hang out on the beautiful California beaches. You have rights to that property. You have some rights to that property, and maybe they're much more limited than, say, a long-term lease agreement, but you do have some rights to that property. So you have a claim over its use. So there you go. Any questions on title or that subject?
Hey, Mike, can I make a comment?
Please do.
I don't know if anyone knows on here, but I saw a post on social media yesterday from an agent from Utah County that said they're having issues in Utah County with a third-party company filing a, what am I trying to say? Filing with, on the property, a 1% transaction fee. So for example, his seller had after the home went under contract, a third-party company out of Texas filed a 1% lien. That's what the word I was trying to think of, sorry. A 1% lien on the property. And the property could not close until they cleared that up. So they basically hold the property hostage until that 1% fee is paid. And he's saying that they're starting to see it all the time in Utah County. So to make sure that you watch your client's property, like that nothing is added to title during the transaction process, because they're seeing these third-party companies come in and do that.
So hold on. When you say third-party company,
Like
I was
an
anticipating
attorney.
something different than what I'm hearing is a scam.
It was an actual attorney's office that filed this 1% lien against the property with no, like they had no right to do it, but they basically did it to hold the property hostage until it was resolved. So people were having to fight this lien against their property in order to close the property.
This sounds crazy.
We're not seeing it up here in Cache County, but I didn't know if other people down along the Wasatch Front, if any of our agents have been experiencing that.
No, not something like that. That seems like a company. So you're kind of describing a company that's just sort of out, that has a strategy to do this, right?
Yeah.
And they don't
exactly.
necessarily have an interest in the property.
Exactly.
Wow, this sounds horrible.
Yeah, it was concerning, right?
Sherry says, sounds so fraudulent. Linda says, seems like there was a situation like that in Iron County. I thought we'd only have one thing to add to your paranoia as a real estate agent. There's another. That's
Mike,
two for the session.
Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah, she hit it.
It's Scott Raven. I think it was Will or maybe Rob or someone. I don't remember who it was that said people are doing it fraudulently and claiming it's an HOA transfer fee also. I don't know if that's what Sharon means, but that's what I've heard is happening. They're making a false claim of a 1% transfer fee to the buyer, and it's fake.
This is all horrible. But the thing that I think of when Scott tells me that is these people who are pulling this scam have been in the real estate world before. Random scammers don't know that, hey, let's start throwing some 1% HOA transfer fees on titles. This is It's getting gross.
I think it's just really important to stay vigilant during the process with our contracts, with our sellers, that we're watching title, maybe checking in periodically with the title company to make sure nothing's been put on title. So it was just, I don't know, it was just kind of an eye opener to me to be like, hey, maybe I reach out to my title company a couple of times through the transaction to make sure no liens have been put on, you know?
Yeah, the other interesting thing is it seems as though you're describing a situation in which they're throwing a lien on because they're aware of a pending transaction. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what he was saying, is it's happening either like right when it's after it's listed or after it goes under contract is when they're seeing these be put on. So it like somehow alerts this company that this
Yeah,
property
that
is
makes
about.
sense. Okay,
Yes.
so yeah, so they're seeing the listing and they probably just throw it on when they see the listing.
Yes.
This is horrible. Steve's iPhone 3 says, wouldn't title verify this? Yeah, I don't think the issue is it sneaking through. I think even if it's fraud, even if it's unwarranted, when someone clouds the title, it's not easy to resolve. It's difficult to resolve. And I think, you can see a lot of situations where paying the ransom, so to speak, is easier than legitimately getting rid of it, which is the design of the scam, as is my guess. Linda said, the people involved, I thought it was a husband-wife agents team in Cedar City that experienced what you're talking about. Linda, is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I think they were actually the culprits and they were held accountable and
Oh.
yeah.
I mean, I don't want to give criminals advice here, but I feel like if you're going to have a scam like this, you shouldn't do it in a sparsely populated county in which you live. Just going to throw that out there. Actually, I will give them do it in the sparsely populated county.
This
Okay.
particular company, and then I don't mean to keep it, but they were out of Texas and they put it on a Utah County property. And that's what he was saying, was that they're doing it in hopes that people just pay it. Because it's like you mentioned, Mike, it's super hard to clear off. So you're literally days away from closing and find out this
Yeah.
lien on there, right? And to get it off in time to close, they're just paying it to.
Yeah, I think if the amount's small enough, that can easily get lost in a settlement statement. Yeah. Scott says, the problem is we're in a 100% lawless profession. I don't know that I completely agree with that. We do definitely have our problems. But I will say that what we're talking about is a problem with recording and titles and all those things. And I don't know what you do to change that. I bet you some crypto bros would propose that we blockchain everything and that's how we would change it. But I don't think that's the answer either. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the seller's disclosure part. This is a hugely impactful part that we should educate our clients on. And what is everybody's talk track? Let's say you represent a buyer. What are you telling your buyers about seller's disclosures and what they should expect? I think at a minimum, to me, this is an opportunity for you to have a conversation with your buyer really about, section 10.2, I think in my brain, comes into this, right? 10.3, that there are no warranties to this property, right? To me, those 10.3 and this kind of come together in a way that I think is the most impactful for our clients, in that this is the seller's disclosures. Yes, they're required by law to tell you everything they know about the property. And the reason they're required to do that is there's a few, but the biggest one is because this home does not have any warranties. It's buyer beware. So this is one of the most important parts of you inspecting this property, is a thorough review of the seller's disclosures. And I actually had an interesting conversation today, and it was relayed from the other agent that we're not accepting this seller's disclosure. That's not a thing. Okay, that's not a thing. So a seller, and I've seen this, they literally take out a blank piece of paper and write a few things on it and hand it over. Okay, they've technically fulfilled their end of the contract. They did a really poor job of it. And the good thing, the one good thing about that's going on that, you know, some of this purchase contract has created an environment where real estate agents are just saying, this is how we disclose, and we use our form, and we do that because it's the most thorough, and at least we know the question has been posed to them and they've chosen to affirm it, deny it, or say nothing, right? We at least have that response from our seller's disclosure form. But we all know that, like, if you've lived in a property for 20 years and you're me, your memory, you don't have the memory really to, even if I'm posed the question, I might forget. Like, I might legitimately forget. On the truly honest side, you might forget. And then on the other side, I hope they don't know, or I hope I can slide this one past. So this is the part where we tell them about, you know, this is a key part in their inspection. They need to review it. And by the way, you as a real estate agent should also review it, right? And have some perspective and some feedback. You know, our job is to go, hey, this might be of concern. You should talk to a professional, I think is our response there. So yeah, have that conversation with them then. Anybody have any other input on this section in educating our clients?
Hey, Mike, I have a question about lead-based paint disclosure. So I had a client that they had the buyer had put in an offer, really great deadlines, short deadlines for due diligence. And then they sent back the lead-based paint disclosure and wanted testing, which extended the deadlines out another 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
And we
Or
represent the seller in this
listing.
situation?
Yeah, the listing. Yeah, the seller.
So, I mean, these are market conditions will dictate our response here, in my opinion. So, and what I mean by that is, if your seller's desperate, they're going to be accommodating to this request, and if your seller is not desperate, they will not be accommodating to this request. So, which is also a way to say it's up to them. Now, really, all you've said here is they want to extend their due diligence period. Well, there's no reason that you can't conduct whatever test you want in the original due diligence period. So if someone's going, well, there's lead-based paint, yeah, but you knew that because of the age of the home. Like, this is something that's known. This is known. What there's a TV show, This Is Known, or something that has that quote. I bet Kristen Visser knows this because this is known. I think it's Mandalorian. Sorry. But it is known that, you know, homes before 1978 have lead-based paint. And if they want to do their inspections, they're certainly entitled to do their inspections. And in fact, they're so entitled to do their inspections, we agreed to it in writing when we signed the purchase contract. And if you want extra time, we may or may not give it to you based on how we feel and how you're responding to us. I mean, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I kind of, and maybe this is my misunderstanding. I thought, like, in the lead-based paint disclosure, like, it's mandatory. You have to give them that time.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I misunderstood your question. I mean, yeah, we have to provide the lead-based paint disclosure, but part of that is if they're realtors and they're using the MLS, we're attaching a lead-based paint disclosure.
Right. And so that's my question, because somebody told me that when they submit the offer, if the lead-based paint disclosure is on the MLS, that they should submit that with their offer. They were supposed to, so that the seller has full information on what they're wanting in deadlines, I guess.
Well, what say you, Sharon? I feel like you have some perspective.
You know, I don't have that form in front of me, Tara, but I think there's either they waive the time frame or they check a box that they want the 10-day period to do their review, or they waive it. I believe that's the form. So if they've checked it, then yeah, they get that 10 days to do their due diligence on that.
But I don't know that I mean, if they're submitting it with their offer and you have more than 10 days of due diligence, what do you need it for?
They didn't submit it with their offer.
Oh,
They did not. And so we were like
oh, I
5
see.
days in, and it says at the time that they click, they get another 10 days. So it went from being a 7-day due diligence to now we're like 2 weeks in.
Oh, I see your question now. Okay. I think the answer to that is you don't get to force new terms onto somebody once an offer has been accepted. You don't get to do that. So you can request it, obviously, but it's like another addendum. You've already agreed to the terms of the contract and, the date of the home, and you've attached a lead-based paint disclosure to the MLS. And they're, you don't just get to force somebody, hey, by the way, here's a lead-based paint disclosure or the disclosure, and we're forcing another 10 days on for our review. Like if you've come to terms with that, then too bad. Kristen says, I've always assumed the 10-day time frame is from acceptance of the offer. Yeah. If it's included with the offer, that's absolutely correct. And I think Tara's position here is they received it after acceptance. And so now they're dealing with, because lead-based paint is like, the reason we have that is, I think through federal law, I'm pretty sure that we're now doing lead-based paint disclosures. And so that carries more weight than just some random addendum. But no, I don't know. I'm not aware of any situation in which a buyer can go, here's a new part of the contract. You have no choice but to accept it. I don't think that exists. So my advice would be, have a conversation about this with the buyer's agent, because if their position is we're going to force this on you and you don't have a choice, that's incorrect. They don't get to do that, and they can make choices about what they want to do.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Hey, sorry I'm outside, so it's a little bit windy, but advice for Tara right here. Can you just respond back with an addendum that just says, hey, I'm going to save you a bunch of money. Home was built this year. We test positive.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that. And by the way, you sound crystal clear.
Awesome.
Yeah, that is, I mean, honestly, that's.
And I'm guessing with Tara, I was over at one of her listings. I can guess which home this is, and most definitely, it's going to have lead-based paint. So it seems to me like that's just a conversation to have off to the side to say, and regardless of what the legalities are in the contract, I mean, it's just a given that you're going to have lead-based paint in this home. So that's what I would go back with.
Yeah, I think the recommendation here could also be that when you get out of the shower in the morning, do not dry off on the walls. Like, don't lick the walls, don't eat off the walls, and you should be probably pretty good there, I think.
You've got my contract then. That sounds exactly like your response.
Yeah, I did take that off your contract, actually.
All right.
So,
Thanks,
Doug. I mean, yeah, I don't think we have anything else to add there. Tara, I hope that helps. If you do use any of these lines, these joke lines on that buyer's agent, if you would text me and let me know how they responded to that, I'd appreciate it. All right, buyer's conditions of purchase. I mean, we are running up on the hour here. I thought we might have a little more time, but good conversation. Buyer's condition of purchase. This is the due diligence paragraph. I don't, I think we're pretty dang good at explaining this paragraph, if anything, as an industry. Well, the majority of us will say. Are pretty good at explaining this paragraph, and now that it's pretty standard just to say, yeah, go get an inspector, hire an inspector, right? As frustrated as we may get with inspectors and their limitations and some of the things they do or don't do, the bottom line is it's a really good way to solve this problem of inspecting the home. Because, you know, the reason we have the joke about, you know, the dad showing up and doing the inspection themselves is because we all know that's a bit of a fiasco, right? That's why it has that reputation. And now we have professional inspectors, and in some places there's licensing, and we can develop some level of trust with one person or another. This sort of solves that. And by the way, let's just drop this line too. When we talk about this specific paragraph and we directly connect it with the date, the 5 o'clock date on a certain date, remember, you don't have to give a reason. The reason is the due diligence condition is the reason. That's the only reason you should ever give. And the only reason that you should ever, you know, say why you're canceling. We're canceling and using this condition in order to cancel this contract and get our earnest money back. Don't provide the details in that, but just let them know. Yeah, this is the get out of jail free card. This is also the period in which we have a lot of leverage to negotiate because we do have the threat of cancellation with no consequences. So those are all the things that you should have discussed under the due diligence condition. Anybody have any comments on that conversation? Moving on. Appraisal condition, that one's really self-explanatory. And by the way, I always throw this out there because, you know, there's some goofy language in the FHA addendum about a buyer's right to retain their earnest money deposit. And there's always a ton of confusion. There always will be. The only time in which that is actually activated is if the property does not hit appraised value. That's when that really is activated. And of course they can cancel for those reasons, as well as the financing condition. Now, and we all also know, this is always sort of, I think agents, especially when I talk to them about the financing condition, and because remember, the due diligence condition and the financing condition have the same language, and it is in the buyer's sole discretion. They can cancel based on those two items. So in their sole discretion means for any reason. And, you know, quite frankly, if a seller doesn't agree to repairs and the repairs are several $1,000s, is that a financial reason to cancel a contract? It's a really great financial reason to not buy a property. It's a financial reason, and we can cancel on that. We don't have to tell them. We don't have to say anything, which is why I prefer the one timeline scenario where you just have one date in which you get all your stuff done, and that's the drop dead deadline. So due diligence and everything's done, and there's only one date. And maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but that's my preference. All right. Anybody have any questions on those? By the way, if we're talking about, you know, if we're in a tricky situation, if you're in a tricky situation and trying to add some value or make a seller accept or make a buyer commit, don't forget about the additional earnest money deposit section. To me, this is the section in which we can apply a little more leverage to a given situation from either side of the transaction. Don't forget that. And I feel like if you are, you know, looking to just push a little bit more for your client, stop in paragraph 848, 8.4 and see how it's doing. Could help solve some problems. All right, we're at 152. We can handle a couple of more. Let's go down to home warranty plan. You know, I think this is pretty self-explanatory because you're going to go over it anyway, and you're going to make that as part of your offer. 10.2 and 10.3, these are big paragraphs. Condition of property buyer acknowledgements and condition of property seller acknowledgements. Basically, both people here are agreeing that this property is sold in as-is condition, which is interesting because we all know what people mean on their listings when they say this property is sold in as-is condition. But it's sort of like industry lingo, I feel like, because in Utah, every property is sold in as-is condition, regardless of what they may agree to with repairs or whatever. Like it's sold in as-is condition. It didn't always used to be that way. Sharon, last time I'll call on you, I swear. I swear. What were the prior guarantees before it went 100% as is condition? Were there some guarantees?
There was a time that the REPC stated that there were warranties, that everything would be in working order, believe it or not. It was kind of a short-lived purchase contract, but yeah, there was a time when it wasn't buyer beware, that the seller was warranting the property. Believe it or not.
Was that also the same time period when you were instructing your clients to please press hard?
You know what? I can't remember the years, Mike. Now you're pushing the envelope here. Can't remember the years when that was the contract.
I remember this was, I mean, I've been doing this a minute, but not not some insane period of time. But even I was in real estate school. I was like looking at this document where, there was like 4 copies of this thing. I'm like, this is what we do? I have that horrible handwriting. So I thought that, my handwriting was a bit of a detriment to my real estate career, believe it or not. It says something about you when you have to press hard and have legible handwriting. It's just not great. This is actually a really important paragraph 11, final pre-settlement walkthrough inspection. This is really important, and I would encourage everybody to never, ever, ever miss this because it is the last time you get to walk through this property before closing. And by the way, is this a re-inspection? Do they get to go through there and conduct inspections? What say you? iPhone 16 Pro Kim says, when we select home warranty on the MLS, does that mean the seller is willing to pay for a home warranty even when this home is sold as is, or is that the intention? That's a good question. I think you're indicating that you're willing to pay for a home warranty. That's my answer. Yeah. And the home warranty is by the way, the home warranty, when we say, maybe I'm rethinking your question now, because we just talked about it's sold in as is condition. Yeah, it's sold in as is condition, and a third party is willing to make some guarantees for an insurance policy on specific items. Has nothing to do with the contract between the seller and the buyer. So essentially, the buyer's entering into a contract with a third party to make a guarantee. So yeah. Tara says, I would say yes to the final pre-settlement walkthrough inspection. It does say inspection in the title. Kristen says, I've always thought home warranty on the MLS means that there's an existing transferable home warranty in place. Okay, we got that would also make sense. I wish I could award both of you 500 bonus points for those answers because they're both great answers. So we're handling 2 things here. Let's do final pre-settlement walkthrough, and then let's talk about the home warranty checkbox. Yeah, there is some inspection that's going to take place on that walkthrough, and Tara is absolutely right. Do they take anything they shouldn't have? The fridge, the stove, the microwave, and the plumbing is still there, and the TV mounts. I mean, I don't know why. Maybe it's because I love TVs, but I'm always eyeballing those TV mounts. They should stay unless otherwise stated. They are attached and affixed to the home. But definitely the fridge and the stove and the microwave, people will take those with them, and it has happened in the past. Feels like it's happening less and less, but there's always the downstairs refrigerator or the garage refrigerator or freezer that they feel like they can take. And somebody almost always forgets to include or exclude, depending on the situation, some of those items. So yeah, that's a really important part of that pre-settlement walkthrough inspection. And I think that's a good point to guide them and tell them what to look for. Here's our list of included items. Here's a list of excluded items. Take note of the condition of the home. Does it still look in roughly the same shape it was when we left? And if we're closing in 3 days and not a single thing has been packed, I should know that too. Not that they did anything wrong in that situation, but it should be concerning.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Can you scroll up just a little bit at section, I think 10.3? I always point this one out. because it's how the property is going to be, I think. So yeah, deliver the property in substantially the same condition, but it's only broom clean and free of debris and personal belongings. That's the only standard we have in this state for transferring property. So, because I think people who come from other states expect that the carpets are going to be cleaned or that it's going to be a higher level, a higher standard, and it's not. That's the only standard we have in our contract for how that home will be passed to the new homeowner.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And I feel like, part of some of this solution, I think for that situation is there are junk people who can come and clear out a lot of garbage in a short period of time. But just beware that, the vindictive, petty people could raise alarm on that. So make sure that you have some communication that says, hey, you left about 1,000 pounds worth of garbage in this place and we're cleaning it up and it's all going to the landfill and you don't get any of it. So just FYI, make sure you're informing them because, if they want to come back and say, you threw away my antique chair, yeah, they can do that.
I have a funny story to share if you don't mind.
Please do.
So I've got this one where the ladies, it's an old, she's lived there for the last 70 years or something, a long time, right? And so we staged it, got pictures, and then the estate people came out, first time working with this estate company. And I told them, don't take the freezer in the basement, but the basement's really scary. So I have to admit, I didn't go inspect the freezer. I didn't know if it was old, new, but my client had told me, I should have inspected it, but my client had told me, oh, it's a great freezer. I just went and got my food out of it the other day and it's been such a great freezer. And so I kind of just thought, okay, it's a new freezer because it's a great freezer. So I told the estate people, do not take that freezer. That's included in the sale. On the MLS, I put the freezer on the MLS. And then I go over there yesterday and there's no freezer. And so luckily we don't have any offers or anything, but I put it on the MLS. And so I went out to see her today and speaking with her, I said, well, I talked to the estate liquidators and they said the only thing they took was an old, dingy, gross looking thing and no nice freezer. And so here we have a difference in communication because of perception. And so I'm talking with her and I say, you said that freezer was a really nice freezer, right? Oh yeah, it's worked lovely, dear. Just, I died because the interpretation was so different from what he said and what she said. So what we ended up doing is just taking it off the MLS and we did deduct that it was a crappy old freezer that she thought was lovely. That's all.
I mean, in the eye of the beholder, right? Yeah, those you get a little sticky on some of those situations. So make sure we're recording all that. And if there's confusion, always throw like if you're really paranoid, maybe you throw in a serial number or something like that, or a photo and attach it. All right, folks, it is 2:01. That concludes the hour. Thanks so much for showing up to Huddle. And next week, we are not going to have one because it is Pioneer Day. So thanks for coming.